guys. So I wanted to go over with you guys on the concept of some strategies to mitigate hunger. The reason why I think this is so important is really, if you tell people that they need to eat right, most people know how to eat right. If I told you to eat chicken breast and broccoli all day long, most people could figure out that that would be a good strategy to losing weight. So you wonder, why isn't everybody losing weight? Why couldn't we all just eat chicken breast and broccoli all day long? The answer is that after a few days, the average person would wind up being outrageously hungry and end up killing a pizza and then a gallon of ice cream and then whatever else comes along with that. Okay, so I wanted to go over with you guys 5 strategies that I find are the most powerful strategies to mitigate that hunger, make sure that we're not getting excessively hungry during our weight loss periods, our weight loss phases. The first of which is going to be to control your insulin levels, or to control your blood sugar levels. Those two have a tendency of going hand in hand. So the best way to do that is through what's called the thermal effect of foods. The thermal effect of foods is the overall calories required to digest the food that you're consuming right now. Basically, if the way that you measure thermal effect of foods is per 100 calories, how many calories were required to digest that food. Excuse me. So if you took, for example, if you took some broccoli and you had 500 calories worth of broccoli, it might take you 450 calories to digest that broccoli. It's actually very, very fibrous. It takes a lot of churning and breaking down all that fiber in order to be able to be assimilated into your bloodstream as sugar. And very little calories get assimilated. Only 50 calories would be assimilated. Now, if we did white bread, for example, you might wind up with the exact opposite. You're probably winding up with almost all 500 calories being assimilated in your bloodstream. Obviously, you're going to wind up with 2 very different bodies if you wound up consuming those 2 different things. You'd also wind up with 2 very different blood sugar levels. The easiest way to decipher your thermal effect of foods is just your calories per volume. So that the lower the calories and the higher the volume is, the more energy it's going to take to digest. And the more energy it takes to digest, the less calories get assimilated. The less calories get assimilated, the less your blood sugar is going to spike up. Okay? And the shorter that time period is going to take in order to, the longer that time period is going to take in order to come upward. Okay? So even if you're consuming more calories and that blood sugar levels never gets high because of the fact it's divided over a greater duration of time. Okay? So just think, whenever you have a plate, if you're allowed 400 calories per meal, then look at your plate and go, how big can I make that 400 calories? And the easiest way to do that is through vegetables, making sure that you're getting a lot of your cruciferous vegetables, your broccoli, your bok choy, your cauliflower, your Brussels sprouts, things like that. Those help with the removal of toxins, but they're also very, very, very good at adding volume to your meals. But if you're eating a 400 calorie meal and it's this big, just know that you're probably spiking up your blood sugar levels pretty quickly, and you're probably going to wind up very hungry very quickly after that. And you're probably assimilating way more calories than you think you should be, or than if you would if you're eating a very large meal. The second one that we look to do to mitigate that hunger is, one of the things I always like to think of is that hunger is something that's trainable. The more that you train that mechanism, that hunger mechanism, to kick in later and later on throughout the day, the less likely you are to be hungry throughout the day. So we use intermittent fasting to do that. One of my favorite quotes is a quote by a gentleman by the name of Theodosius Zazansky, who says, biology only makes sense within the light of evolution. And if you just think about this, if your ancestors, prior to the agricultural revolution, prior to having farms, wheat, corn, soy, all those things like that we use as those cereal grains, you would have had to go out and find food, right? You woke up in the morning, and the average person 20,000 years ago wouldn't have woken up and, oh, I'm hungry, oh good, there's a woolly mammoth, boom, I killed it, and let's go eat, right? You would have probably spent a good portion of that day trying to seek out food, and you probably would have spent a lot of energy in order to seek out that food. So there are certain hormonal responses that occur that make you hungry. And the more that we push back those those hormones, the better your body gets at going, you know what, we don't need to be hungry this early in the morning. The nice thing about that is the primary hunger hormone that we generally refer to is a hormone called ghrelin. And actually having a little bit of ghrelin in your system could actually be a good thing. It upregulates growth hormone. Growth hormone is what makes you lean, what makes you strong, and it's also what makes you young. Okay, we spike out in growth hormone through that maturation process, and that's one of the reasons why you're leaner, why you're got less wrinkles when you're younger. All sorts of good things happen with ghrelin. It could also be very beneficial to redefine what hunger is to you. Okay, one of the things that instead of going, gosh, you know what, I feel a little something happening in my body, I must be hungry, because the solution to being hungry is to go eat. Well, if you redefine that feeling as I'm burning fat, well, now you want to push it back a little bit further. One of the strategies that I found that works very well for me to train this even better is there's a phenomenon that happens when you work out, and a lot of you guys know this, is that you release endorphins when you work out. Another phenomenon that happens is we release endorphins to kill hunger pains. Okay, so you go, God, I'm really hungry, I better go eat something, and you eat something, and generally the more calories you consume, the more endorphins you release. Well, we can replace the endorphins released from consumption of high-calorie foods with a workout. And so we could go through and say, gosh, you know what, I'm going to schedule a workout in the morning where I go through and I do a workout, I allow those endorphins to kill off those hunger pains, and you'll find that you don't get hungry throughout that workout. I would imagine, if you guys pay attention, you'll notice that you're never really that hungry during a workout, and that's because you're releasing the same endorphins that kill off those hunger pains. Okay? So that's the second one. The third one is to sleep. Okay? There are a lot of different reasons why we go to sleep at night. We go over all that. I'll do a whole thing on sleep. One of the primary reasons though that we do go to sleep at night is to reset your hormonal levels. Okay? And during that process, what we're doing is we're uprating various hormones that make you feel fuller for longer. One of those primary hormones is a hormone called leptin. Very commonly, when we don't sleep very well, those leptin levels drop. Your leptin is a lot like insulin. It's considered a master hormone, where there's a lot of other hormones that go along for that ride, where when your insulin levels are high, it pulls a whole chain of other hormones that are not beneficial for you along with it. And the same thing happens is when we do sleep, your leptin levels increase, and as those leptin levels increase, there's a whole chain of hormones that get drug along the line with it. Leptin decreases hunger. It also upregulates your metabolism. So if you want to talk about a great strategy for losing weight, increasing leptin should be one of the highest things you could do, and the best thing you could do to increase leptin is just simply sleeping more and sleeping deeper. We could go over various tactics on how we could sleep better. Things like no blue light at night. Make sure that you're in as dark an environment as possible. Try to keep as close to 65 degrees as possible. That's where they found that people sleep at their deepest. And make sure that there's as little on your mind as possible. Things like meditating will help with that too as well. The next one, number 4, is going to be keeping a food journal. Okay? And not just keeping a food journal, but keeping a journal of the foods that keep you the fullest for the longest periods of time. Because if you eat a 400-calorie meal and an hour later you're starving to death, you're probably going to wind up over-consuming calories. Now, if you eat a 400-calorie meal and 4 hours later you're going, gosh, you know what, I have to eat another meal right now, you're probably not going to be storing a lot of fat. You'll find that different foods respond to people differently in different ways. Bananas are a good example for this. For some people, bananas will leave them feeling outrageously hungry, and it actually is having a pro-inflammatory response for them. That inflammation causes a spike in insulin. Insulin causes hunger. Hunger causes you to eat more. Eating more causes you to store more body fat, etc., etc. Now, are bananas bad for everybody? Probably not, but for some people it can be. For others, it can be. But the best way to find that is to just journal. Keep an eye on the foods that are leaving you hungrier, and keep an eye on the foods that leave you fuller for longer periods of time. For me personally, if I go through and I consume a bowl of oatmeal with a little bit of protein powder in there and some blueberries, one of my favorite meals. I like starting off my days with that because my next meal could be 6 hours away, and I go, gosh, you know what? I am still full from that bowl of oatmeal. And it's really not that many calories, about 400 calories. Now, for other people, it might be that leaves them very, very hungry immediately after, especially if you're doing like the packets of oatmeal that are higher in sugar. That's going to make you considerably hungrier. But the best way to find that out is just to journal and to, be paying attention to draw your attention to the meals that we eat and how they affect us and how they affect our hunger levels. The last one, number 5, that I wanted to go over with you is try to find something that puts you into a state of flow. Okay, flow is a state of hyper concentration. Generally, we have a tendency of losing track of time when we're in that hyper focused state. For me personally, when I was a kid, I would have probably been the chunkiest kid in the history of the world had it not have been for soccer. In my house, we had the option to eat red vine licorice, Good and Plenty's, ice cream, and that was pretty much our options, the food that we had in the house. My one saving grace was the fact that whenever I played soccer, I was in a state of flow. And I would go out and I'd practice soccer, and next thing I knew, the sun was down, and I was having to turn on the floodlights in order to continue practicing. And that's the biggest thing that kept me out of the kitchen, eating all of the junk food that we kept in our house. But find something that you can lose track of time. Find something that you enjoy so heavily that you no longer think about that food. You no longer think about wanting to, open up that refrigerator every 2 seconds. Trust me, when you're in a state of flow, you're not sitting in front of the cabinet door open looking to see what there is to eat. And also, too, it's just something that brings a little more enjoyment to life. For me now, fly fishing kind of does the same thing. Unfortunately, we can't play soccer right now because of the virus. But for you guys, plan out something that naturally puts you in the flow. Have it part of your weekly schedule. For me, soccer every Tuesday was part of my weekly flow cycle where I go, gosh, you know what? I get so lost in soccer that I just go through it, and there's no other thought other than being in that specific moment. And when you're in a state of flow, you're constantly in that moment. And it also trains you to stay in the moment. All right? So those are my 5 things. Once again, a quick review is manage your insulin levels by making sure there's as much food on your plate for as little calories as possible. Number 2 is try to push back breakfast as far as you can. You could use a morning workout, whether it be fasted cardio, whether it be a fasted resistance training, whatever it might be, to help to push back that meal and reduce out those hunger pains. Number 3 is making sure you get plenty of sleep at night in a dark, cool environment. Get rid of as much lighting in your house as possible before you go to bed to allow you to fall into a deeper and deeper sleep. Number 4 is journaling, and number 5 is finding a nice flow state, something to take your mind off the fact that you might otherwise be hungry, and find something that you get lost in time. Okay? All right, guys. Have a great workout. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. I will talk to you soon.